DS, Citroen's premium brand, is taking another crack at having a piece of the action on the very lucrative market traditionally occupied by brands like Audi, BMW, Lexus, Mercedes or Volvo. But Marek, why didn't you mention Alfa Romeo? Seriously? Anyway, this is the DS number 8 and it competes against, you'll never guess, the BMW iX3, among others. Let's check it out. This episode is brought to you by 3W Liners. Keep your car interior clean with perfectly fitting OEM compliant mats, which are also eco-friendly and odorless. I have a set of 3W liners in my car and enjoy how winter, mud and grit stays on them and how easy they are to clean. They come with OEM mounts or adapters and everything stays in place. Get a set of 3W liners for your car, check out the link in the video description and use my code to get a discount.
Je suis sexy, genre je sais pas. Monte dans l'avion direct, aéropas. J'ai pas beaucoup de cash, ça ne va pas. Mais j'ai ce truc qui frappe, Dua Lipa. Je suis sexy, genre je sais pas. Je monte dans l'avion direct, aéropas. J'ai pas beaucoup de cash, ça ne va pas. Mais j'ai ce truc qui frappe, Dua Lipa.
Never mind the digit, the DS number 8 is a coupe SUV, and yes, it's bigger than the DS7 crossback SUV, but smaller than the DS9, but the DS9 sold so well it didn't even get a midlife cycle refresh. Also, the DS9 was a limousine, and the DS number 8, because all new DSs now have the word number in its name, may look like a limousine, but it's actually an SUV, the coupe kind. The car is 482 centimeters long and 190 centimeters wide. The height is 158 centimeters and the wheelbase is 290 centimeters long. In terms of dimensions, the number 8 plays in the same league as the BYD Sea Lion 7, also a coupe SUV, Porsche Macan, also a coupe SUV, Volvo EX60 or the BMW iX3. Of course, the BMW or the Porsche offer much better performance and driving characteristics, but that's no surprise. Oh, and I forgot to add that DS number 8 is an EV, and it replaces the rather unfortunate DS9. The press release mentions the French art of electric travel, aerodynamics, the drag coefficient is just 0.24, the light signature, which indeed attracts attention. DS always had interesting lighting. First and foremost, we have the DS Luminascreen grille. It's lit up all the time, more discreetly during the day, but it's on all the time. Then we have the Matrix LED headlights and the DS light blade vertical daytime running lights, which resemble, yes, blades. En garde! Also, the rear lighting is multi-dimensional and you'll be able to tell this is the DS number 8 if you ever see one in the wild, and something tells me you'll see more Rolls-Royces and Bentleys than DS's. But I'm foreshadowing. If you ask me, the DS number 8 is a visually attractive, interesting and unconventional vehicle. Without context, it doesn't even look like an SUV, and even if you put it next to an SUV, only the height betrays it. After many years of experiments with some of the worst retractable door handles, DS finally managed to implement something that sometimes works. The door handles can pop out as I approach the car with the key, but I turned it off because I don't like when they do that. Or I can give them a light push. Yeah, anyway, these are the front door handles because the rear door handles are concealed in the C-pillars, and I understand this choice from the visual perspective, but I'm not sure if a flagship limousine should have high-mounted concealed door handles. When the driver or the security details opens the door for the VIP, they should be able to hold the door securely by the handle with one hand, while with the other hand they hold an umbrella, or they help the VIP to exit the vehicle. In my opinion, this is a bad design choice. Too much égalité et fraternité. And since we're around the rear doors, let's take a look at the rear seats, which seem comfortable, but look how high my thighs are in the air. Furthermore, the seat cushion is short, legroom, I'm 175 centimeters tall, and the driver's seat is set to my driving position, is fine, but with the passenger seat pushed all the way back, it's tight. Furthermore, the front seat backs feel flimsy, the same goes for the door upholstery. Headroom is okay, but that's because the backrests are reclined at a 30-degree angle, and the backrest angle isn't adjustable. There are door pockets, cup holders in the armrest, a flat floor, USB-C ports and a 12-volt outlet, third-zone climate control, and heated and ventilated seats are an option, and somebody hasn't specified them on this example. ISOFIX anchor points are only in the rear. The backrest splits 40-20-40. The boot capacity in this test car is 605 liters, as some of the underfloor space is occupied by the optional focal audio system subwoofer. The standard capacity is 620 liters for the front-wheel drive version and 581 liters for the all-wheel drive. You can order an optional mini spare for the front-wheel drive model, which takes up most of the space under the floor, and then the boot volume drops to 574 liters. The boot is 115 centimeters deep, 100 centimeters wide between the wheel arches, and approximately 50 centimeters high from the false floor to the parcel shelf, plus another 12 centimeters or so under the floor. Be warned, the parcel shelf has massive mounting points on the side, so you can't use the full boot width all the way to the shelf. Also, the parcel shelf doesn't fit under the floor. A manually removable tow hitch is available as an option. Nothing says Flagship like having to remove the tow hitch yourself. At least the gesture opening and closing of the boot works flawlessly. And of course, there is no frunk. Audi, BMW and Mercedes stubbornly avoided it for years, so let's not expect anything different from the French. But they've got gas struts, premium, luxury. Huh? I respect DS for constantly experimenting with its user interface. Most brands, once they introduce a new feature in one model, quickly try to standardize their interior design. For example, every Volvo cockpit has looked roughly the same for years, regardless of the segment. With DS, you never know what will surprise you in the most recent model. For example, I booked the DS number 8 for a test drive because of the steering wheel. I promised myself that I would focus more on cars that piqued my interest, because most new cars these days are predictable and boring regardless of the price range. Now, this 4-spoke steering wheel bridges the old automotive world with the modern era, symbolized by ubiquitous screens. DS has ditched the pop-up analog clock. It's a shame because it was a nice detail that just needed some refinement, but the dashboard design still reminds me of the 90s 20s sports cars with brushed aluminum finishes. I mean, it was brushed aluminum back in those days. Nowadays it's more like plastic, I think. But I'm buying it, even if for the first 2 days those large silver speaker grills were very distracting. I kept seeing them out of the corner of my eye more than the wing mirrors. Incidentally, Audi, for example, installed displays for the virtual wing mirrors around here, so it is a good place for that, not necessarily for the speakers. In front of the driver is a 12.25-inch display. I like that you can configure several views with different content depending on your needs. For example, I might want navigation and multimedia for the city and energy consumption data for the motorway. The central display measures a whopping 16 inches across. The DS Iris 2.0 operating system is decent, though not without its French quirks, which I'll discuss in a moment. In everyday use, what bothers me most is that comfort settings, including seat or steering wheel heating, require exiting the navigation system, as the climate control settings take up the entire screen. Yes, you could probably create some shortcuts, but a few more physical buttons could also have been added. These French quirks include, for example, the way settings are highlighted depending on the context. So, in the safety system settings, disabling something requires me sliding the virtual slider from green, which is on, to gray, which is off. However, in the quick menu for disabling ADAS, it's the other way around. So it's logical when you think about it, but to avoid confusion, they could have simply used check boxes here. Another French quirk is the cup holders under the center console. In order to place a cup in there, you have to take your eyes off the road and lean down. And of course, at least one time I placed the cup next to the cup holder and it fell over when I was turning. Forget about placing even half a liter bottle in there, there just isn't enough height. The French, they don't drink much water anyway, do they? L'eau, c'est pour les poissons. Vous savez ce que font les poissons dans l'eau? Garçon, du café. At least there are large door pockets. The wireless charging is lined with what looks like Alcantara. It doesn't drop the connection, so that's good. And it's even ventilated, but not from the bottom, where the phone heats up, rather from above. And when the sun shines through the panoramic roof, the phone starts to overheat. The storage compartment under the armrest, however, is ventilated, and it's spacious. The glove box is also large. The DS number 8 is designed to transport us comfortably from A to B. This comfort is influenced by several factors: ride and acoustic comfort, seat comfort, range and route planning with charging to ensure stress-free journey. It would also be nice if the assistance systems could relieve the driver of some of the driving burdens. The DS Active Scan suspension featured in earlier DS models actively scans the road ahead, the camera detects imperfections in the road surface and sends the information to the active shock absorbers, which react proactively to smooth things out. And it works brilliantly, except for manhole covers, which the DS still considers an even element of the road infrastructure, not a potential trap which will damage your 21-inch rim. But for most of the time, the suspension is generally comfortable. Next up is the acoustic comfort, which DS states is benchmark in its class. I don't know what class they are talking about. If they are talking about the BMW iX3, which turned out to be suspiciously poorly soundproof during my first drive in Spain, then the DS number 8 is indeed better. But if you're driving on an expressway at speeds above 100 km per hour, wind noise becomes noticeable. The press release doesn't mention active noise cancellation. Perhaps the designers thought they'd cover all the bases with aerodynamics and laminated glass, and no one would be driving the DS any faster because France is riddled with speed cameras. The next item on the list is seat comfort, and here I was surprised actually. Not only are the seat cushions short, which made my thighs go numb after a couple of hours, but the lumbar support adjustment is inadequate, and after 700 kilometers my back ached like it hasn't done in a long time. These seats are bad, period. And of course, I stopped for charging, and halfway through the journey I also took a half an hour walk, so I wasn't behind the wheel for 8 hours straight. I was picking up an elderly relative from their vacation, and it was 350 kilometers one way from where I live. So besides testing the comfort, I had the opportunity to test the range and route planning with charging. Speaking of the range, the DS promises up to 750 km WLTP combined and over 500 km on the highway. I was driving on a dual carriageway with a speed limit of 120 km per hour and in places even lower. Energy consumption for the entire trip was just under 23 kilowatt hours, which includes a couple of dozen kilometers in the city at the beginning and at the end of the journey. Along the dual carriageway, the car was using 25 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers on the first leg of the journey and 24 kilowatt hours on the return leg. The temperature jumped from about 3-4 degrees Celsius in the morning to about 15 in the afternoon. This is a front-wheel drive long-range model with a 97 kilowatt-hour traction battery, so simple math tells me the best it could do at 120 kilometers per hour was maybe 400 kilometers. Of course, I could drive 100 or 110 kilometers per hour, but I wouldn't be able to last in these seats for so long. Route planning with charging works well enough. You can enter not only the battery charge level at the charger, but also at your destination, which is important when you have a longer route to cover that day and you don't have time to charge at the intermediate point. I had time to charge because we planned to go to a restaurant, but there wasn't even an AC charger anywhere in the area, not to mention a DC charger. So I had to fast DC charge once on the way there and another time on the way back. There were charging hubs along the way which finally worked without a hitch, outputting up to 400 kilowatts. They were conveniently located where I needed them and also rather expensive. I charged 60 and 50 kilowatt hours, and in total it cost me more than 80 euro. Yes, there are ways to charge cheaper, but I was focusing on convenience rather than looking for a cheaper network. By the way, if I hadn't charged the car at home, but had to use only public charging network, the entire trip would cost me close to 120 euro. Even with the current fuel prices, it would be cheaper to drive an internal combustion engine car. But of course, for commutes from the suburbs, an EV is cheaper than an ICE car, especially if you have solar panels. In any case, the route planning worked, but I noticed that the charger database was out of date. I passed chargers, including several hubs, that the DS navigation system didn't know about. I like that the sat-nav sees average speed cameras. Unfortunately, it doesn't tell me my average speed, like, for example, Hyundai does. It only flashes yellow or red if I'm going too fast at that given moment. The DS number 8 can charge at up to 160 kilowatts. The most I saw was around 150, but I was talking to another driver by the charger, so I may have missed the peak. Battery preconditioning is automatic when you navigate using OEM SatNav. If you're using Google Maps, you can set the preconditioning manually. As standard, the DS has an 11 kilowatt onboard charger. You can option a 22 kilowatt hour charger as well. Driver aids, which should make long motorway journeys less tiring, in the DS number 8 are subpar to say the least. The car does have adaptive cruise control with active lane keeping assist, but in dense traffic you simply cannot rely on the system to start braking sufficiently early. It's as if the radar didn't see further as the speed increases. So you have to constantly adjust the distance to the car in front, because it's either too short in case of an emergency braking or too long, and then other drivers will keep cutting in front of you. There is also a lane change assistant, but even with the indicator on, when the car should know it's about to overtake, the adaptive cruise control will keep slowing down until you're all the way in the left lane, and only then it'll accelerate again. So you're basically blocking other drivers. On the plus side, once you're off the motorway, the DS number 8 has a surprisingly quick steering rack, visibility is okay, and there's also a virtual rear-view mirror should you have tall passengers in the back. On the negative side, I don't like how the regenerative braking is set up, regardless of whether I set it manually with paddles on the steering wheel or set it to full-on one-pedal driving. It's always somewhat abrupt. I wasn't able to learn to feel it within a week, so I think it's not me, it's it's the car. There are 2 battery packs and a choice of front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. The basic model has 230 horsepower, a 74 kWh traction battery, and a range of 550 kilometers. The front-wheel drive long-range model, like I'm reviewing today, has 750 kilometers range and 245 horsepower. An all-wheel drive version with the same 97 kWh battery has 350 horsepower and 688 kilometers of range. The 0 to 100 km per hour time is 7.7, 7.8 and 5.4 seconds respectively. I checked, and instead of 7.8 seconds, I managed 7.9 seconds. It was cold and the car is on winter tires. This could have also affected the range. If you're wondering, how do these Matrix LED headlights work? They get the job done. They light up the sides of the road while at the same time avoiding preceding and oncoming vehicles. It doesn't seem like much on camera, but to the naked eye it looks a bit more effective. However, it's not as fancy as what the Audi, BMW or Mercedes headlights do in this scenario. Prices of the DS number 8 start at €57,700. This test car is a front-wheel drive long-range in Étoile trim. With options, it costs €80,130. I was so busy making fun of the French automotive savoir-faire that I forgot to record the ending while I was still on set, so I had to go back to DS, and now I have to do it in the parking lot like a twat that I am. Anyway, to sum up, the DS number 8 is a car you buy not because it's the best, but because on the one hand people will point fingers at you behind your back, and on the other hand they will envy you for being so chill despite the backache, because this thing really has terrible seats. Anyway, how do you like the DS number 8? Let me know in the comment section below. If you like my sarcastic, down-to-earth and possibly mildly amusing car reviews, join me every Friday at 3 p.m. Central European Time, and don't forget to subscribe and like this video as it helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.